Welcome to our newest video guide. It's the updated Lightning Conduit Elementalist starter, which is based on the most notable new skill introduced in patch 3.19. It's a lightning ability that deals very high damage against shocked enemies. The skill itself has very high base damage with high damage effectiveness, and it's further increased by the effect of shock on the enemy when it's consumed, on cast. As an Elementalist, you can shock with all types of damage, but for its maximum effect, it's obviously better to use lightning spells, and Orb of Storms is our #1 recommendation. The shock spreads further and with increased effect thanks to the lightning masteries used. This is a very basic life setup with no special item requirements, that's specifically designed for the early stages of new leagues. With bonuses to shock effectiveness and elemental damage from passives, you will be good to go with only self-found rares, but the build can be easily upgraded by using uniques like Algor Mortis, Thunderfist, Doriani's Prototype, or possibly even by going for a more endgame oriented variant based on staves with Crystallized Omniscience and the Annihilating Light. This build deals damage via Lightning Conduit, which requires the enemy to be shocked. Extra damage multiplier depends on the shock effect, so you are going to use Orb of Storms with maximum shock effect. Orb of Storms can constantly hit enemies while you use other spells within its radius. This build relies on life, armor and capped block chance with glancing blows for the defenses. Combined with immunity to elemental ailments, you are getting a relatively tanky character without excessive investments. Clear speed varies from average to good depending on your gear. Can be considered a solid B tier if you get Impulse's Broken Heart. Lightning Conduit deals simply massive damage when combined with Potent Shock. Easily an A tier build. At the same time, this is one of the cheapest starter builds out there, with literally zero initial investments needed. This build requires literally no unique items but will perform significantly better if you can obtain Impulse's Broken Heart and Thunderfist gloves. Eventually you can try endgame approach using Crystallized Omniscience and Annihilating Light, but we will not add support for those in this particular video. Impulse's Broken Heart is a unique item that makes clearing maps noticeably faster, by having enemies explode dealing lightning damage. It lacks elemental resistances however. Algor Mortis is yet another very interesting pair of gloves that can increase your lightning damage against enemies inside your chilling grounds, which can be created by Cold Snap or Frostblink. Thunderfist gloves fit this build perfectly as they increase the effect of your shock, and grant you an extra support gem to boost the damage of your Orb of Storms or Lightning Conduit. Singularity Scepter has just received significant buffs and adds tons of lightning damage to spells while hindering nearby enemies and increasing your damage against them. Barrack's Grip grants Life Leech based on your damage dealt, adds a decent amount of extra life, and added lightning damage to spells, making it one of the best budget rings for this build. Valico Sign. Just like Barrack's Grip, it adds valuable leech and increases your lightning damage. However, in most cases, it will grant less raw DPS boost. Watcher's Eye is a great addition to this build if you are looking to invest in it a little more. Simply get Wrath mods with extra lightning damage or penetration, or possibly more defensive-oriented determination ones. Your rare equipment will come with basically generic stats for lightning spellcasters. It's a non-crit build, which makes it even easier. Simply get over 5,000 life, cap resistances, and get as much added lightning spell damage to spells or global increases to spell or elemental damage you can afford. On your helmet get more life, resistances, and later as you can afford more sophisticated gear, nearby enemies have -9% to lightning resistance. Minion helmet with minion life and increase to the level of socketed minion gems can also be used for your golem setup. You can use Wand or Scepter, on which look for high bonuses to lightning spell damage and cast speed. Crit related stats are irrelevant. At some point you can craft the Trigger mod so that your Wave of Conviction and Curse are cast automatically. Rare Shield should give you high defensive stats like life and resistances. It's good to get extra spell block chance here so that you can cap it at 75% with Glancing Blows. On your rare body armor simply aim for high defensive stats and possibly spell block chance, which can be crafted here. Rare boots should provide life, resistances, and movement speed. On top of those mods, if you want to upgrade your pair, simply look for Tailwind mod, which will increase your action speed. Given your defenses are fixed, you can look for bonuses to spell damage or increased damage while leeching on your gloves. Life and resistances are the only affordable mods worth looking for on a belt. Stygian Vice is the best base thanks to the extra abyssal socketed it provides. Amulets offer a huge variety of mods, but you should be the most interested in life, resistances, lightning spell damage, and eventually increases to lightning or intelligence gem levels. Ash, Frost, and Storm is the best anointment, or you can simply get one of the budget life ones here. On your rings, simply aim for high defensive stats and fix your attributes and resistances here. You should also get one unset ring so that you can use Molten Shell without skipping any of the other more important gems. Rare jewels should provide extra life and some other various stats like spell damage, cast speed, or possibly missing attributes and resistances. Using unique flasks is optional, but the two listed are cheap and offer decent DPS bonuses. Atziri's Promise grants extra chaos damage, chaos resistance and leech, while Vessel of Vinctar boosts your lightning damage if you get the penetration or added lightning spell damage variant. At the same time, you are immune to shock, so the downside is negligible. You should also use Life Flask with bleed removal, Granite Flask for extra armor, and Quicksilver Flask for extra mobility. Lightning Conduit is the newly introduced lightning spell that is used to consume shock from enemies and deal increased damage based on that shock's effect. It has high damage effectiveness, so supporting it with added lightning damage is a no-brainer. You should also use Concentrated Effect, Elemental Focus, Lightning Penetration, and Hypothermia support gems for the highest DPS output. Orb of Storms is an orb spell that is used to apply potent shocks thanks to the use of Overcharge and Unbound Ailments gems. You can easily apply shock in a wider radius by using Chain Support Gem, and hit enemies quicker if you use other lightning spells while within its radius. Thanks to the use of Eldritch Battery, you can reserve up to 100% of your mana, which allows you to use additional auras. We recommend using Determination for extra armor rating, which is one of the core defensive layers, Defiance Banner to increase your armor even further, and reduce the chances for nearby enemies to critically strike you. You should also use Tempest Shield to boost your block chance, and possibly Purity of Elements for extra resistances and elemental ailment immunity. It can be replaced with Flesh and Stone if you find its bonuses more valuable for your character. It's also recommended to use Wrath for massive lightning DPS bonus, but since you won't have any spare mana at this point, it's best to use it as a temporary blessing skill. By paying its mana cost, you will gain the benefits of the aura for 10 seconds. Wave of Conviction is used to apply lightning exposure to enemies on hit, and you can also link it with Hextouch support and Conductivity, so that it applies this curse as well. Initially you might need to cast it manually, but later on you can craft the mod to have those two spells triggered by your weapon on skill use. Cold Snap creates chilling grounds whenever triggered, allowing you to generate frenzy charges, but also increases your damage if you are using Algor Mortis gloves. Use a level 1 gem with cast when damage taken unless you are able to trigger it via your weapon. Flame Dash is the best movement spell for this build, which allows you to travel faster or avoid incoming damage. Make sure to replace it with Frostblink if you are using Algor Mortis. Molten Shell is the recommended guard spell that increases your armor rating and grants a protective shield to absorb some of the incoming damage. If you are lacking free sockets for it, make sure to get an unset ring. When it comes to the bandits, the only viable option is killing them all for 2 extra passive points. For the major god, you can choose Solaris or Lunaris. Both grant you extra physical damage mitigation, but Solaris is more effective against bosses, so you might want to stick with it. As you should be immune to elemental ailments, minor god options are somewhat limited. We recommend getting Shakari to reduce chaos damage taken and grant extra protection against poison. In this section, we have recorded the passive point allocation in such a way that it should resemble that process as you start your own character and progress through the campaign. This is a simple non-crit build, so the choices are rather obvious. You are going to pick almost all of the lightning damage and shock-related passives around the witch's starting point. Taking Lightning Mastery that makes you non-crit damage lucky should be your priority, later on progressing to get all the ones that boost your maximum effect of shock, and effect of non-damaging ailments from Elemental Mastery. During the leveling you should also allocate most of the life nodes, possibly picking up the plus 50 life mastery first. After you allocate Eldritch Battery, you should have no problems with your mana. Just make sure to have a viable source of energy shield leech for that. All the block chance nodes and glancing blows should be allocated around the time you're starting maps, as they will provide with some extra defenses for the tougher content. If you like our content, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to get notified when we upload the final version of this build. After patch 3.19 goes live, we are going to do more thorough testing on this exciting ability. Stay safe, Exile.